This anime begins as a peaceful city is attacked by a monster known as the kaiju. The emergency kaiju alert sounds throughout the city and people are directed to designated safety areas. This thing is huge and it causes massive destruction while roaming the city, so a defense force arrives and opens fire on it. This is in humanity's first time being attacked, so some people watching the scene eagerly wait to see which division of the defense force will arrive. It's the third division and they swiftly move in to deal some damage to the kaiju. One girl from the division carries a large cannon and uses this weapon's immense power to put a hole right through the kaiju, ending its life as she watches. Afterwards, our protagonist named Kafka is amazed at how huge the monster was. Its body parts are scattered everywhere, so he told the others in his group that they will surely have to work overtime for a while. Nearby citizens cheered the third division for completing their mission with no casualties. Kafka arrives in of the crowd that has gathered, and while the heroes walk away from the defeated monster, Kafka walks towards it. This is because his job begins after the battle is over. Him and the group he is in does the job that no one cares about and no one is grateful for. They are in charge of taking the defeat of kaijus apart and getting rid of them. Kafka does just that and deposits a sample of the monster in some drone. Their job is not as glamorous as fighting the beast, but it's definitely a different kind of battle in its own right. This is perfectly demonstrated when Kafka notices someone hoisting something they should not be and it explodes, causing someone to get hurt. Luckily, Kafka has had injuries just like it before, so he handles the situation. These guys have a ton of work ahead of them and Kafka Lumens are the bosses want them to clean up the gigantic mess in just 1 week. Just then Kafka is told that he will be going to a different area as they're short-staffed, and he is shocked to hear that he will be going to the intestines. Kafka is dragged away, so the others discuss just how bad the intestines are. Kafka arrives at the intestines and instantly loses his appetite. He is a hard worker though, so Kafka pushes through his discomfort to get the job done. That night, Kafka arrives home exhausted, and he does his best to get rid of the smell from work. A news report comes on about Division 3, and their captain, named Mina. At just 27 years old, she has not just become the captain, she has managed to slay hundreds of kaiju. A look back shows that she and Kafka were friends, and she was emotional when they promised to eliminate kaiju together. Mina is incredibly popular and famous now, so there are talks of her becoming a candidate for commander of the defense force. Kafka wonders how he ended up on the opposite side of things, but the thought is too depressing, so he tries not to think about it. He reminds himself that cleaning is also an important job that helps people. On top of that, he's able to eat the foods he likes and has an apartment that he is content with. Kafka thinks that there should be enough and just goes to sleep. The next morning, Kafka arrives at work where he is introduced to the part-time student that will be working with them from now on. His name is Ichikawa and he is determined to join the defense force. Kafka's coworker points out that Kafka had the same dream he has, but he eventually just gave up and became a veteran at the cleaning company. Ichikawa wonders why he gave up, so Kafka conceives that he realized that his abilities are limited. He tried hard, but there's always someone better. Kafka tries to have a positive attitude about it, but Ichikawa completely serious. He declares that he will never give up for any reason, so he can't understand Kafka's logic. He doesn't want to understand either, so he just goes to get changed. Everyone thought that they would get along because of their shared dream, but Kafka is furious since he knows that there was no way to answer the kid's question without looking miserable. Kafka is forced to do some reflection and he wonders if quitting is really that bad. They all had to work and go over the plan for the day. They decide which parts need to be preserved for research and which parts simply need to be destroyed. Ichikawa is assigned to the intestines. Kafka is glad because of the kid's attitude, but he finds that he will be assigned to intestines as well for the second day in a row. He is told that it's because he's good at dealing with intestines, so Kafka vows to show everyone what he's made of. The boss points out how Kafka complains a lot, but acknowledges that he's a diligent worker. If he had passed the exam, he would have been a good defense force officer. Afterwards, Kafka is happy to see that Ichikawa was grossed out by the intestines experience, but he had it just as bad as he must keep himself from puking. Just then, Kafka notices that the kid didn't bring much to eat. Ichikawa rudely tells him that he doesn't have much of an appetite, but Kafka gives him a vitamin drink. He insists that Ichikawa drink as much as he can, or else he won't be able to make it through the workday. Kafka also offers him some nose plugs. Ichikawa refuses them, but Kafka insists that it will help. At the end of the workday, everyone gets cleaned off and one group leaves first. Kafka is glad to see that the worst part of the cleanup process should be over now. Ichikawa arrives, so Kafka thinks he wants a rematch from their little wrestling match, but Ichikawa surprisingly thanks him for his help getting through the day. Before he leaves, Ichikawa points out that the Defense Force has changed their age limit to join. It is now 33 years old. Ichikawa knows that it's none of his business, but he could tell the Kafka looks sad when he talked about the Defense Force earlier. Ichikawa tells him that he can just quit if he wants though, but Kafka thanks him and states that Ichikawa is a better person than he thought. Ichikawa tries to keep his edgy persona, so he reminds Kafka that he doesn't actually care, but just then the monster appears to attack him. Kafka rescues him just in time. He's in bad shape. Ichikawa is shocked by what he calls a kaiju, and Kafka must rescue him from being eliminated once again. Kafka tells him to run and get help, but he refuses to leave Kafka. Kafka reminds Ichikawa that he's supposed to join the Defense Force, but he won't be able to if he dies now. Kafka once again demands that Ichikawa leave, so he does. Kafka gets the terrifying monster to chase him through the streets and just barely manages to dodge its attacks. He then gets away for a moment by running into a narrow building and runs through a pane of glass. Another look back shows the Kafka and Mina both lost their schools and their homes. Kafka hated the kaiju, but only because they kept him from finishing his Pokemon game. Mina was disappointed to hear that this was all he cared about, but Kafka is just keeping a positive attitude. As for Mina though, she was sad because a cat named Miko died. They became serious as they stared at all the damage done by the kaiju, and they simultaneously declared that they will join the Defense Force. The two insult each other for this crazy idea since they are both so young, but they eventually decide to have a competition to see who can become the coolest officer. Kafka assured that they could do it and declare that they will eliminate all the kaiju together. Back to the president, Kafka realizes that things should not have ended up this way. He must continue running though, as the monster just smashing through buildings to get to him. Kafka decides to make a stand against the monster and determines that he must attack its legs. Unfortunately, he doesn't stand a chance as the monster instantly attacks him, and Kafka wonders why things ended up this way. Kafka screams in agony as the monster stomps on him, and he can no longer move as his leg is broken. Kafka loses all hope as the monster's just about to consume him, but Ichikawa appears to rescue him just in time. Kafka calls him an idiot, but Ichikawa explains that he already notified that Defense Force. Kafka meant that he was an idiot for coming back at all, but Ichikawa points out that if he abandoned Kafka, he would never be able to become a Defense Force officer. Just then Kafka has flashbacks to when he received the Defense Force rejection letter and his dreams were crushed. He curses himself for being so useless, as Ichikawa gets thrashed around by the monster. Kafka is furious since he hasn't changed at all. He wasn't able to protect his friend's cat, and now he can't even protect the new kid at work. Kafka's frustration causes him to scream out with rage just as Ichikawa about to be eliminated by the beast. However, just then the monster's absolutely blown to pieces, leaving the two guys shocked. A female voice declares that the target has been eliminated, and Kafka shocked to see that Mina has arrived with the other members of the 3rd Division. She has some of her crew take care of the injured, while her and the rest go check for more kaiju. Kafka is checked on, but he's in really bad shape and unresponsive. That night at Yokohama Hospital, Kafka marvels at how amazing Mina has become. She was able to eliminate such a terrifying monster in an instant, so Kafka determines that she has gone to a place that he can never reach. Kafka thought that he was alone, but he is shocked when he learns that Ichikawa right next to him. Ichikawa points out that if Kafka didn't rescue him and tell them to run away, he would be dead right now. Kafka is then shocked when Ichikawa says that he is cool, and Kafka thinks about his competition with Mina to become the coolest officer. Ichikawa thinks that Kafka should be an officer, but once again declares that it's up to him. Kafka punches himself, finally snapping out of his negative mindset as he wonders how long he was intending to turn a blind eye. He thanks Ichikawa and tells the kid that he really is a good person. Kafka still doesn't think that giving up is a bad thing, but it's definitely not good to deceive himself. He then confidently declares that he will once again aim to become a Defense Force officer. His heroic declaration is interrupted though when he's shocked to find a monster hovering above him. This thing says that it has found him and it shoves itself into Kafka's mouth. Ichikawa wonders if he is okay, but he's clearly not as he gasped for air and thrashes about. Ichikawa checks on him, but he is shocked to find a monster in Kafka's bed. Kafka casually looks at Ichikawa and then casually looks at his reflection. The shock eventually hits them, so Kafka tries to tell Ichikawa to calm down and that it's him. Ichikawa calms down, but some old guy arrives to call the defense force. Two guys freak out as they think about what the defense force does to kaiju, so the guys panic as Ichikawa tells Kafka to run. Another look back shows Kafka telling Mina how to immobilize kaiju. She took notes as he told her that she needed to attack the legs and tie it up. Mina was scared by the thought of fighting a monster, so Kafka assured her that when the time comes, he will be by her side. Back to the present, Mina thinks about how that was a lie. Just then Mina is informed that a tiger was spotted at the Yokohama hospital, and she declares that she will handle it. She will dispatch along with her officers and they will eliminate the kaiju. And with that, we have come to the end of this part. Stay tuned for next part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.